She walked into a Lagos courtroom in bathroom slippers and a dress that had been washed so many times the color had faded from blue to almost gray. She had no lawyer. She had no suit. She had no legal training and no idea how to address a judge. She had never been inside a courtroom in her life. What she had was a bag. A small, brown leather bag with a broken zipper that she held against her chest with both hands, the way you hold something that is worth more than your life. Inside that bag was a document that had been hidden for 18 years. A document that a very powerful man had spent a fortune making sure would never see the light of day. A document that, if it was real, would strip him of everything. His houses, his land, his name, his inheritance, and hand it all to the girl in the bathroom slippers. The rich man saw her walk in. He looked at her dress. He looked at her shoes. He looked at her bag. And he laughed. He did not know what was in that bag. He did not know who had given it to her. And he did not know that by the end of that afternoon, the woman he had just laughed at would be standing in his father's house, legally, permanently, and with the full authority of the Lagos State High Court behind her. This is that story. Before we dive in, pause for 2 seconds and help me do something fun. Drop a comment right now with your city and country. I want to see how global this community really is. I am looking for the 2 viewers watching from the farthest apart today, and I am going to pin the winners. Now, back to the story, because things are about to get very interesting. To understand what happened in that courtroom, you need to understand the Arinze family. Chief Obiora Arinze was one of the wealthiest men in Anambra State. He owned land the way some men own shirts, casually, abundantly, without counting. Farmland in Nnewi. Commercial property in Onitsha. A compound in the village that had 16 rooms, a chapel, and a gate so tall you could see it from the main road. He made his money in the 1980s. Transport and logistics. Buses, trucks, fuel distribution. The kind of business that turns a clever man into a rich man and a ruthless man into a dynasty. Chief Arinze was both. He had 2 families. The first was his wife, Lolo Chidinma, and their son, Chinedu. They lived in the compound. They went to church together on Sundays. Chinedu went to the best schools, Command Secondary School, then a private university in Accra, then an MBA in London. He drove a Range Rover by the time he was 25. He wore Italian shoes and French cologne and spoke with the careful diction of a man who had been trained to sound expensive. The second family was a woman named Obiageli. Obiageli was from a neighboring village. She was a seamstress. She met Chief Arinze when she was 22, and for 14 years she was what people in the village quietly called the other wife. Chief Arinze visited her 3 times a week. He paid her rent. He bought her a sewing machine, and when she gave birth to a daughter, he held the child, named her Nneka, and said, "This one will surprise everyone." He did not put Obiageli's name on any property. He did not introduce her at church functions. He did not bring her to family events. But every month, without fail, an envelope arrived at her door. And every Christmas, he came to her house, sat on the plastic chair in her parlor, and ate her jollof rice as if it were the only meal in the world. Nneka grew up knowing her father was rich. She also grew up knowing she was not allowed to say so. "Your father loves you," Obiageli told her once, braiding her hair in the back room of the seamstress shop. But love and acknowledgement are not the same thing. In this world, a man's legitimate family gets his name. The rest of us get his silence. "That is not fair, Mama." No, it is not. But that is how it is. Chief Obiora Arinze collapsed at a funeral in 2005. Heart failure. He was 63. He was dead before the ambulance reached the hospital. The burial was enormous. 300 guests, a brass band, a cow slaughtered at the gate. Lolo Chidinma sat in the front row in black lace, accepting condolences with the practiced grace of a woman who had been preparing for this moment for years. Chinedu stood beside her. 28 years old, composed, already wearing his father's gold cufflinks. Obiageli and Nneka were not invited. They stood outside the compound gate, Obiageli in a plain black dress, Nneka in her school uniform, 12 years old, and listened to the music and the prayers and the speeches about what a great man Chief Arinze had been. A security guard told them to move along. "Family only," he said. Obiageli took her daughter's hand and walked home. Within 3 weeks, Chinedu filed probate documents claiming the entire Arinze estate. Land, property, vehicles, bank accounts, everything. The filing listed one heir, Chinedu Obiora Arinze, sole surviving son. No will was presented. No mention was made of Obiageli. No mention was made of Nneka. As far as the law was concerned, they did not exist. Subscribe now and stay to the end, because I am going to show you one detail hidden in this story that quietly explains why the Arinze family lawyer resigned the day after the court ruling, and you will not unsee it once I point it out. This is not just a family dispute. This is exposure, and we are about to break it down step by step. Nneka grew up without the Arinze name. She finished secondary school in the village. She could not afford university. She apprenticed with her mother at the sewing shop, cutting fabric, hemming trousers, stitching wedding dresses for women who would never know that the girl pinning their seams was the daughter of one of the richest men in the state. Obiageli never recovered from the erasure. She grew quieter with every year. Her health declined. She stopped eating well. She stopped laughing. The sewing machine sat idle more often than not. In 2020, Obiageli fell ill. It was serious. Nneka took her to the general hospital. The bills mounted. The landlord sent letters. The shop closed. On a night in December, the harmattan wind pushing dust through the louvered windows, Obiageli called Nneka to her bedside. "There is something I have to give you." She reached under her mattress. Her hands were thin and unsteady. She pulled out a brown leather bag with a broken zipper. "What is this, Mama?" "Open it." Nneka unzipped the bag. Inside was a folded document, yellowed at the edges, handwritten on legal paper, dated December the 23rd, 2004, 1 year before Chief Arinze died. It was a will, the last will and testament of Chief Obiora Arinze. "Where did you get this?" Nneka whispered. "Your father brought it to me himself, the Christmas before he passed. He sat in that chair." She pointed to the plastic chair in the parlor, "and he told me that his lawyer had written his official will, but he did not trust his lawyer. He said the official will could be changed. He said powerful people change documents all the time." Obiageli's voice was barely audible now. "So he wrote a second will. In his own hand, he signed it. The village catechist witnessed it, and he gave it to me. He said, 'If anything happens to me, give this to Nneka. When she is old enough, when she is ready.'" Nneka read the document. Her hands were shaking so badly that the paper trembled. The will named 2 heirs, Chinedu Obiora Arinze, to receive the commercial properties in Onitsha and the transport business. Nneka Obiageli Arinze, to receive the family compound, the farmland in Nnewi, and 60% of the bank holdings. The will explicitly stated, "My daughter Nneka has been denied my name in life. She will not be denied my estate in death. This is my wish. This is my instruction. Let no man change it." Obiageli looked at her daughter. He loved you, Nneka. He could not say it in public, but he wrote it down, and writing does not lie. Obiageli passed 3 weeks later. Nneka buried her mother with borrowed money. She packed the brown leather bag, and she took a bus to Lagos. Real quick, pause and drop a comment below. Tell me if you have ever been in a situation where you knew you had the right to something, but nobody believed you. Where the system told you to sit down and be quiet. Share your story, because this community is built on people who refuse to be erased. The case was filed as Nneka Arinze versus Chinedu Arinze, petition to contest probate and establish heirship. Nneka filed it herself. She walked into the Lagos High Court Registry in Ikeja, asked the clerk for the correct forms, and filled them out in the waiting area with a pen she borrowed from the woman at the next desk. She paid the filing fee with money she had earned sewing school uniforms in her mother's shop. She could not afford a lawyer. The case was assigned to Justice Adaora Nneka, a no-nonsense judge in her late 50s, known for running a tight courtroom and having very little patience for theatrics. Chinedu Arinze, on the other hand, arrived with a legal team, 3 lawyers, led by barrister Femi Adeyinka, one of the most expensive probate attorneys in Lagos. Tall, silver-haired, tailored suit. The kind of lawyer who bills by the minute and whose presence in a courtroom tells you that money is not an issue and winning is not optional. The courtroom was half full, a few journalists in the back. Inheritance disputes involving wealthy families always attracted some attention. Some members of the Arinze extended family had come from the village, and in the second row sat 2 elderly men that nobody in the courtroom recognized. They had taken a bus from Anambra that morning. They were wearing matching white shirts and holding their Bibles. The bailiff called the case. Justice Nneka entered. Everyone rose. "Be seated. Counsel, identify yourselves." Barrister Adeyinka stood. "My lord, I appear for the respondent, Mr. Chinedu Arinze, alongside my learned colleagues Barrister Okonkwo and Barrister Balogun." Justice Nneka looked at the petitioner's table. Nneka was standing, no lawyer beside her, her brown leather bag on the desk. "And who represents the petitioner?" Nneka swallowed. "I represent myself, my lord." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Barrister Adeyinka glanced at his colleagues. One of them covered a smile with his hand. Chinedu, sitting behind his lawyers in a charcoal suit and gold wristwatch, leaned back and crossed his legs. He looked at Nneka, at her faded dress, her bathroom slippers, her bag with the broken zipper, and he let out a short, quiet laugh. It was not loud, but in the silence of that courtroom, everyone heard it. Justice Nneka heard it too. Her eyes moved to Chinedu, then back to Nneka. "Miss Arinze, are you aware that you have the right to legal representation?" "Yes, my lord, I cannot afford it." "The court can adjourn to allow you time to seek legal aid." "With respect, my lord, I have waited 18 years. I do not wish to wait any longer." Justice Nneka studied her for a moment. Then she nodded. "Very well. Petitioner, you may present your case." Nneka stood. She placed both hands on the desk to keep them steady. "My lord, my name is Nneka Arinze. I am the daughter of the late Chief Obiora Arinze of Nnewi, Anambra State. My mother was Obiajeli Arinze. She passed away in December 2020. "Your mother's surname was Arinze?" Justice Nneka asked. "No, my lord. She never married my father, but my father gave me his name at birth. He acknowledged me." Barrister Adeyinka stood. "My lord, the respondent disputes this claim entirely. There is no record of the deceased acknowledging any child outside his legitimate marriage. No birth certificate bearing the Arinze name. No naming ceremony. No, I have a photograph." Nneka opened her bag and removed a faded photograph. "This was taken at my naming ceremony in 1993. The man holding me is Chief Obiora Arinze. The woman beside him is my mother. The man standing to the right is the village catechist, Mr. Solomon Okiki, who blessed the child, who blessed me that day." She placed the photograph on the bench. Justice Nneka examined it. "Is this photograph authenticated?" "The catechist who was present that day is in this courtroom, my lord. He traveled from Anambra this morning." Every head turned. In the second row, one of the elderly men in white shirts stood slowly. His Bible was in his hand. "My lord, my name is Solomon Okiki. I served as the parish catechist in our community for 37 years. I was present at the naming ceremony of this child. Chief Arinze held her in his arms and named her Nneka, which means Mother is Supreme. He asked me to bless her. I did." The courtroom was silent. Barrister Adeyinka cleared his throat. "My lord, the testimony of one elderly man about an event from 30 years ago is hardly..." "Noted," Justice Nneka said. "Continue, Miss Arinze. If you love your mama, you need to subscribe right now, Because at the end of this video, I am revealing one detail that nobody in that courtroom understood at first. The reason Chinedu's own lawyer resigned the next day. There is a secret buried inside this will, and when I show it to you at the end, you will realize this village girl did not just win a case. She dismantled an entire family's lie. Trust me, the secret is worth it. My lord, my primary submission concerns this document. Nneka reached into her brown bag. Her fingers were trembling. The courtroom was silent, the kind of silence where you can hear the overhead fan turning. She removed the folded paper. She held it with both hands. She walked it to the bench. This is the last will and testament of Chief Obiora Arinze. It is handwritten. It is dated December the 23rd, 2004. It was signed by my father and witnessed by 2 people. She placed it on the bench. Justice Nneka unfolded it carefully. She read in silence. Her face did not change, but her reading slowed, the way a person slows down when they reach a sentence that changes everything. She looked up. Barrister Nneka, have you seen this document? No, my lord, and I would submit that its authenticity is highly questionable. Anyone can write a document, forge a signature, and the document is handwritten. Are you familiar with the deceased handwriting? Nneka paused. I would need to compare it with known samples. My lord, Nneka spoke. My father wrote this will in his own hand because he did not trust his lawyer to protect it. He told my mother that powerful people change documents. So he wrote it himself and gave it to the one person he knew would not change it. And that person was? My mother, a seamstress in a village who could not read English. She kept it under her mattress for 18 years. She never opened it. She never showed it to anyone. She gave it to me on her deathbed. Justice Nneka looked at the document again. The will names 2 witnesses, Solomon Okiki and, she read the second name, Clement Obi. In the second row, the second elderly man in a white shirt stood. I am Clement Obi, my lord. I was the assistant catechist. I was present when Chief Arinze signed this document. I watched him write it. He read it aloud to both of us before signing. He said, I want 2 men of God to witness this because what I am doing, the lawyers will try to undo. The gallery shifted. Someone in the back row whispered. Chinedu uncrossed his legs. His jaw tightened. Barrister Nneka stood quickly. My lord, with the greatest respect, the authenticity of this document has not been established. The respondent has a will on file, the official will prepared by Chief Arinze's longtime solicitor, which was lodged with the probate registry in 2005. That will name Mr. Chinedu Arinze as the sole heir. I am aware of the filed will, Justice Nneka said. Miss Arinze, are you challenging the validity of the probated will? Yes, my lord. On what grounds? Nneka reached into her bag one more time. She pulled out a second document. On the grounds that the probated will was signed by my father on the 14th of January, 2005. My father's handwritten will is dated December the 23rd, 2004, 3 weeks earlier. She placed the second document on the bench. But that is not the grounds for my challenge, my lord. The grounds are these. She paused. The courtroom held its breath. My father died on the 8th of March, 2005. The probated will was signed on January the 14th of that year. But according to his medical records, which I obtained from the General Hospital in Nui, my father suffered a major stroke on the 3rd of January, 2005. He was admitted to the hospital on the 4th. He did not leave until the 20th. She looked at Barrister Nneka, not at Chinedu, at the lawyer. My lord, my father signed the probated will on January the 14th. He was in the hospital on January the 14th. He could not hold a pen on January the 14th. He could not sign his own name. The courtroom did not erupt, it imploded. Barrister Nneka's face went gray. His 2 colleagues stared at the desk. One of them began packing his files. Chinedu leaned forward and grabbed his lawyer's shoulder. Say something, he hissed. The whisper carried in the silence. My lord, Nneka began, but his voice had lost its polish. My lord, the circumstances of the signing are. The respondent maintains that. Barrister Nneka. Justice Nneka's voice was ice. Are you telling this court that your client presented a will for probate that was allegedly signed by a man who was hospitalized and physically incapacitated at the time of signing? My lord, I was not involved in the original probate filing. I was retained for this matter only. Then I suggest you be very careful about what you say next, because what I am hearing sounds less like a probate dispute and more like an allegation of fraud. The word hung in the air like a blade. Nneka stood up. His composure was gone. The Italian shoes, the gold wristwatch, the charcoal suit, none of it mattered anymore. He was a man watching the floor open beneath him. This is rubbish, he said. His voice was too loud. My lord, this girl is a villager. She has no right to my father's estate. She is nobody. She showed up with a bag full of fake papers and 2 old men she probably paid to. Mr. Arinze, Justice Nneka's gavel came down. Once. Hard. You will not speak unless spoken to. You will not refer to the petitioner as nobody, and you will sit down. Now. Nneka sat. His hands were shaking. In the gallery, Solomon Okiki, 78 years old, Bible in his hand, looked at the man who had just called Nneka nobody. He shook his head slowly and said, quiet enough that only the people in this row could hear. Your father would weep. If you are still watching, you are exactly the kind of person this channel was built for. Hit that subscribe button right now so you do not miss the next episode. Because this exact pattern, a powerful family stealing what belongs to someone they consider beneath them, shows up in another case I am covering soon. A story involving land, a Lagos courtroom, and a woman who walked in with evidence that made a billionaire's lawyer resign on the spot. The formula you are watching right now becomes even more explosive in that story. Justice Nneka adjourned for 90 minutes. When she returned, the courtroom was standing room only. Word had spread through the courthouse. Lawyers from other chambers had come to watch. The journalists in the back row had tripled. Be seated. She opened her ruling. This court has reviewed the handwritten will dated December the 23rd, 2004, alongside the probated will dated January the 14th, 2005. This court has heard testimony from 2 witnesses to the handwritten will, both of whom were present at the signing and have provided consistent, credible accounts. She looked at Barrister Nneka. This court has also reviewed the medical records submitted by the petitioner, which indicate that the deceased was admitted to hospital on the 4th of January and remained under medical supervision through the 20th. The records indicate that the deceased suffered significant impairment of motor function, including the inability to write. Her voice hardened. This court therefore finds that the probated will of January the 14th, 2005 was not signed by the deceased. It was signed by someone else. It was filed fraudulently. And it was used to disinherit a legitimate child whose existence was deliberately concealed from this court during the original probate proceedings. Nneka pressed both hands against his face. The probated will is hereby declared null and void. The handwritten will of December the 23rd, 2004 is admitted as the valid and final testamentary document of the late Chief Obiora Arinze. She turned to Nneka. Miss Arinze, under the terms of the handwritten will, you are entitled to the family compound in Nnewi, the farmland holdings, and 60% of the deceased's bank assets. The transport business and commercial properties in Onitsha are allocated to the respondent. She paused. Additionally, this court refers the circumstances of the fraudulent probate filing to the Director of Public Prosecutions for investigation. The solicitor who prepared and lodged the January will is also referred for investigation. Justice Nneka closed the file. Miss Arinze, your father wrote something in his will that I wish to read into the record. He wrote, "My daughter Nneka has been denied my name in life. She will not be denied my estate in death." She looked at Nneka over her glasses. She will not. The gavel came down. The gallery erupted. The journalists rushed for the doors. The lawyers from other chambers whispered to each other. Solomon Okiki clutched his Bible to his chest with both hands, his eyes closed, his lips moving in silent prayer. And Nneka stood at the petitioner's table, in her faded dress, in her bathroom slippers, with her brown leather bag with the broken zipper, and wept. Not the way people weep in victory, the way people weep when they finally hear their father say their name. Even if it takes 18 years, even if it has to come through a judge's mouth in a courtroom full of strangers. After the ruling, Nneka walked out of the Lagos High Court. She did not take a car. She walked down the courthouse steps, past the journalists, past the lawyers, past Chinedu's team who were already on their phones calling the office. She walked to the car park. She found a low wall in the shade of a mango tree. She sat down. She opened her bag. She took out the photograph, her father holding her at the naming ceremony, her mother beside him. Solomon Okiki to the right. She looked at her father's face. He was smiling. It was not a posed smile. It was the smile of a man holding something he loved and knowing he could not keep it. Her phone rang. It was Solomon Okiki. "My daughter." "Papa Solomon." "Your father is resting now. He is resting." A long pause. "Papa Solomon, why did he not just acknowledge me when he was alive? Why did he have to hide it in a will?" The old man was silent for a long time. "Nneka, your father was a brave man in business and a coward in love. He could build an empire, but he could not face his wife. He could sign a document in secret, but he could not say your name in public. That was his weakness. But the will was his apology." Nneka held the photograph against her chest. "It took 18 years to deliver." "Yes, my daughter, but it was delivered. And the truth, once it is written down, does not expire. It waits. It waits for the right person to carry it into the right room and say it out loud." Nneka smiled. A small smile, the kind that comes not from happiness, but from the end of a very long road. "Thank you, Papa Solomon, for traveling to Lagos, for standing up in that courtroom. I promised your father, on the night he gave your mother the will, I promised him that if anyone ever challenged it, I would stand in any room in this country and tell the truth. A promise to a dying man does not have an expiration date." A girl walked into a Lagos courtroom with no lawyer, no money, and no name. She walked out with a compound, farmland, 60% of a fortune, and the one thing money cannot buy: her father's acknowledgement, written in his own hand, hidden for 18 years, carried into a courtroom in a brown leather bag with a broken zipper, by the daughter he loved but could not claim. If this story made you feel something, share it, right now. Send it to the group chat. Send it to the person who told you that you would never amount to anything. Send it to every girl who has been told she is nobody. Because Nneka Arinze was called nobody in the courtroom, and she stood up, opened her bag, and proved them wrong. Click the video on your screen right now to watch the story of Madam Koi Koi, the teacher they turned into a ghost story to hide what really happened at her school. You will see the same pattern. A powerful person erasing a woman's truth, a document hidden for years, and the moment when the lie finally collapsed. That video has already changed how thousands of people see the most famous legend in West Africa. You do not want to miss it.